Illuvium Player vs. Player is launching November 28th. And not only that, but it has been listed on the Epic Games Store. Leaks have been dropping left and right, and it is time to prepare for battle. If you don't know what Illuvium Arena is, it is an upcoming 1v1 auto battler with some serious strategic depth, graphic fidelity, and the potential to even rival team fight tactics. I'm Caveman, and in this video, I'm going to be discussing all of the leaks and information that's been shared with us so far, and speculate on what decks might be good in day one that I'll definitely be trying out. If you want, feel free to check out the timestamps below if you want to jump straight to the speculation, or if there's leaks you want to skip over you've already seen. But let's go ahead and jump into the win condition and game modes for those who might not be as familiar. You'll be playing as a drone that can summon creatures known as illuvials with mastery points known as MP. Your drone will start around 800 to 1,000 health points. In each round, you will get an allotted amount of mastery points. Rumors have been around 90 to 120, and it scales and varies throughout the rounds. You will also have a set amount of time to place, and that also varies. It could be around 45 seconds and increasing as well, somewhere around there. And once the timer ends, the illuvials will then fight to death. Any remaining illuvials will deal damage to the enemy drone based on their mastery point cost. There are three ways to play PvP. First is a casual queue, where you get randomly set against an opponent. However, if you like the competition, you can then join the Ascendant or Ranked Mode queue, where you'll be put against someone who has a similar matchmaking ranking, and we'll discuss more about ranked later on. And the last way to play is by invite code. This is so you can find a friend, challenge them, and train and or just crush them in a 1v1 and really just have a good time, or come up with interesting or unique strategies. The board will look generally the same as survival mode, Illuvium's player versus environment auto battler, which has been in private beta for some time. If you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend it. It is a really enjoyable experience, and it'll get you prepped for PvP. We do have some codes lying around, so if you comment below, if you don't have access, let us know, and we should be able to get you in the game. But if we look at the user interface here, there are a few things I want to point out. You'll notice in the top center that you have the rounds, and they play out similar to TFT or Teamfight Tactics, where it appears the green and red icons represent PvP player versus player rounds that have concluded, red meaning you lost and green meaning you won. The gray rectangles represent the legendary augment rounds, and we'll jump into those later as well. You can also see the health bars next to the players, their profile pictures known as illuvatars, which are really, really cool. They've been highly customizable. You can definitely check those out later as well once you get more involved in the Illuvium ecosystem. You can also see the mastery points that your opponent has remaining, as well as their deck, which is really quite interesting. You can see it below their health bar. You can click on that and really try to understand and see where they are, what they have left, and what strategies they might implement throughout the game. So we'll discuss more about that later. Now, on the bottom, you can see our deck. And one thing you will notice is that our Ranger, which is the main character protagonist in the Illuvium creature collecting game, so that's a third mode, a third game that Illuvium has in their ecosystem, they have weapons and equipment known as suits, and they are now cards, which is different from survival mode because those used to be in a separate category. So this will make the aspect of deck building in player versus player more interesting and a more thoughtful process, as you'll have to figure out what weapons and suits you'll want to take with you. On the very bottom, you'll see that they also added some new filters to accommodate weapons, suits, as well as mastery points, so you can quickly sort it out and find what you're looking for, so that you can place all your units within the time allotted. Now, this thing right here in the bottom right, that is a refresh or a filter reset. So that's something that'll be really valuable if you're just like, okay, I need to get back to everything so I can see a more high-level picture of what cards I have left remaining. And the last thing I want to point out is that in this graphic, you can only sell one illuvial per round. I've heard rumors that it's either going to be, it's going to be more than that, potentially unlimited, but I don't know the specifics around that, so who knows how that'll turn out. Now, these next graphics are leaks from Grant showcasing how they may actually integrate the health bar directly into the game map, and I think this will add some significant immersion, feeling like, I don't know, like in a Yu-Gi-Oh battle against someone else. It's going to be really interesting. I think it'll look epic. So let's go ahead and move on to the more interesting leaks, like the PvP deck builder. You'll notice right here that we have this nice layout. This graphic's been around for a little while, but in the top you can see you're able to name your deck, put a little tag for which game mode it's going to be associated with. Able to see that here it has 30 items, so 30 cards that I have heard can and may vary. They're still playtesting to see what is a significant and the best deck size for us to play with. You'll see it's broken down into 4 categories below that: the illuvium, alluvials, the augments, weapons, and the suits. So you'll really be able to kind of play around and decide how to build your deck. So I'm super excited to get into that more. Like I mentioned earlier, if you go to the end of the video, we have more deck speculation. Now, I do want to touch on the suits before we go into more detail on the PvP. So if we take a look at this graphic here, you can really see that they're putting a lot of time and effort into the skins. I think these look really cool. I'm super excited to get my hands on, especially this red and black one. You know, we got to rep Polymos. That is so sick, and I just love red and black in general, so that's really interesting. I do want to mention some other leaks that have gone around, and that is the suits are no longer, if you played survival mode, they typically only gave health and then resistances. Apparently they're going to have all variety of stats, so it could boost your omega power, or your like ultimate, your magic power, or your physical attack. It can literally do anything, and so this is going to make deciding on which armor you want is going to be significantly more impactful. There's going to be a lot more variety, so I think that's going to increase your potential for your ranger. I also just hear in general, the ranger is a unit on the battlefield, so definitely consider really learning how to use them properly. But let's go ahead and jump into the Arena PvP flow. This has been updated a little bit since the last time, if you ever saw this graphic. The one major change I've really seen is that there's no longer an item placement round, so that's going to be out of there, and it, obviously it's subject to change, but that thing I believe is gone, and so you'll have basically board reveal straight into board battle, and then it'll determine if you have much damage or if you beat your opponent. So that's how that's going to be going, but you know, the first step is to create your deck, and so we've already kind of gone over the deck builder a little bit there. The next step will be a deck reveal phase, and so you'll be able to take a look and a peek at their cards, and during this time it's really important to understand what their goal is for the next 3 rounds, and also plan out what their end game is. This is vital because the next step will be guessing what legendary augments will be useful for them. You need to understand what gives them the greatest benefit, and if you don't know what legendary augments are, that there are a variety of different upgrades for your alluvials. Some of them range from giving them a whole additional composite, which I think is absolutely mind-boggling. At least from what I've heard, you can make like a 3 toxic, 2 granite, berserker rye plants, and if you guys don't know, those are a whole bunch of synergies that just make this unit an absolute beast and potentially unkillable. So you know, you guys have a lot of different interesting thoughts there, so you really need to think what augments will they try to do, and you want to try and understand what their win conditions are. If they're an early game aggressive deck, it'll try and kill you, try and block them from getting an augment that would amplify that early game advantage. Or maybe they have a very powerful single carry comp where it revolves around 1 unit. Make sure that you block that augment that would make them overpowered. After you analyze your opponent's deck, it is time to bid. This is where you and your opponent will have 4 tokens to bid on augments. There are a variety of ways you can play this, but you will only obtain augments where you bid more than your opponent. You can put a max of 3 on 1 singular augment, and you could also try and do a spread strategy where you just place 1 on all 4. In the case of ties, the augment contested will be destroyed. So when you're thinking back to the deck reveal, you should be thinking which of these will give your opponent the greatest power spike, as well as what gives you the best advantage, and play accordingly. One thing to note is if an alluvial is equipped with one of these and they survive the battle, the mastery cost of the augment will also contribute to the damage to the opponent. That also works with any augments that you place on your alluvials. Moving on to the placement phase. This is the main component of the game. Each round, you'll be able to place alluvials and equip augments at a cost, the mastery points. If you want to move them from the previous round, it will also cost. I've heard rumors around 15% for moving them, and then similar, if you sell them, you're going to actually lose 25% or only get refunded 75%. So this makes it very important to plant, like trying to make it permanent, those high cost units and trying to minimize selling or moving them. One note is that the ranger is the only unit you can always move and change equipment for free. So really use that as the wild card to really change up your strategy and make unique twists that the opponent might not be able to see every time. Now, once your timer runs out for the placement phase, it is time for board reveal. And so before this, you will not have seen your opponent's board, or at least you're seeing the board from the last round. The alluvials will then battle it out, and the outcome will result in damage going to the player who loses. If both players still have HP, it will then go to the next round where the players will gain more mastery points, and then it'll go back to the placement phase where throughout the rounds, they'll keep adding up mastery points, which may vary throughout different rates, and they keep battling until the health goes out. Now, if you win any any battle. They're adding these really nice cosmetic blasts. I don't know if these are going to be live for this beta, but some of them look really cool. And they're also adding a bunch of different ways that you can communicate through the game. You'll be able to flex on some people with the emojis, similar to team fight tactics, and then just have some really nice banter with the opponent. And you'll also be able to move your drone, which just adds something to do while you're waiting. It just adds a little bit more immersion, like you're actively there. It's not just two boards sitting around doing nothing. You're actually a live character in the game. And it's also just another way to communicate, because you can pop the emojis over your drone. Once again, I'm not sure if any of this will be implemented, and they've also shown a leak of implementing chat. I don't know if that's going to be implemented, but all of these will, once they're done, will make this game so engaging and enticing. It's going to feel like a nice AAA game similar to Teamfight Tactics, and I really, really cannot wait to continue the trash talk. Now, once you do bring their HP down to 0, you will have earned your victory. And if you're playing ranked, this actually increases your rating. Illuvium will have an MMR system, and it seems pretty diverse. I'm sure it'll be trying to place you best against opponents of similar rank, so excited to do that. And when we look at the overall rank structure, it looks like there are 9 ranks, each with 3 tiers, and they follow a similar pattern to other competitive games, but they incorporate through 3 new ranks, or just replace the top ranks, and I think they just fit a lot better in the Illuvium ecosystem. So you now have Hollow, which I would assume somewhere in Master, Grandmaster kind of area, and then Dark Hollow, which is like Challenger, Predator area. But then they do add a special last rank, and this is only meant for a single person, the Obelisk rank, the ultimate symbol of skill and intellect. Who will hold it? Me? Maybe? No, I doubt it. But we're going to be trying. So, all right, now that we've gone over all the leaks for Ascendant Arena PvP, let's start jumping into a little bit of speculation. So I'm going to be going over 3 theoretical archetypes for decks that I think will be making waves in PvP. And realistically, all of them have different use cases, and depending on balancing, maybe one of them will be good, maybe none of them will be good. Who knows? It's purely for fun. So let's go ahead and jump into it. A little bit about parameters beforehand. I'm setting up these decks with the assumption, and these are not real numbers by any means, that we're going to be running with 30 cards in our deck. The drone that we have has 1,000 HP, and that we're running with 120 mastery points gained per round. And that doesn't vary. We're just going to keep that flat. I think that in the game, once it's released in PV3, we will have some scale, and who knows what those mastery point costs will be. But so that's what the parameters we're going to be playing with right now. And so for our first deck, we're going to play with an aggro deck, and something that we're going to overwhelm your enemy with, a whole bunch of mini dudes, and really try to maximize your primary synergy early on so you can have an advantage and really kill them as quickly as possible. This is a deck that's meant to kill them off before they can scale. And if we think about what our parameters are here, we're getting 120 per round. And in theoretically, with an aggro deck, you want to win every round by a landslide. You don't want to lose a single unit, because you need all that damage to be hitting them every single round. So you have to make your positioning basically permanent, so that you're not moving them, you're not spending any money or any mastery points shifting them or selling them. So you're basically pre-planning your board the entire way. And it can be a little bit flowcharty, but that is what I imagine aggro decks to be like. And so this first one we'll start jumping into now is a Water Fighter Earth Rogue deck. All right, so that's what we're going to be playing with. We got a lot of Dokas, Grackos, Volantes. It's meant to be, low tier, low cost. And I think that these are going to be really powerful early on, because when open beta releases, you're not going to have like a tier 5, stage 3, a ram fire sitting around. It's going to be a lot of these low tier units. So you're going to have to learn how to understand how to play with these aggro decks early on and how to counter them, because I imagine they will be rampant, and these are going to be common decks. So let's go and jump into it. For round 1, we've got just these 3 units. We're going to have the Water Doka, the Earth Doka, and a Riptor. And then for our Ranger, we're going to give her some armor, 10 cost armor, and then a 20 cost Water Sword is what I would try to do. Obviously, I don't know what the costs are for weapons or equipment either, so that's all theoretical. So that would put us at 120 MP, which is exactly what we have for that first round. We place these guys on the board, and for positioning wise, you really want to try and spread out the damage. You want all of them to live, and because you are activating 3 fighter, 3 water, you should have a pretty good strong start. And realistically, you should be choosing units that are really strong, just base stat wise, so that they can all win one-on-one. You might even want to spread this out more. I set it up like this, so you have the Riptor on the left side. He can tank anyone from over here. Maybe they all position left, so he's going to be able to take the brunt of that, and then you're going to have your Dokas on the inside because they're the more squishy ones, and you're going to have your Water Ranger, which should be pretty tanky with the extra armor, the extra 10 armor suit. So with that being said, this should be a pretty successful mission. You should go in there and win. If you don't, all right, you're already going to be struggling because it's you have to win early and hard. So that's how the first round's going to go. Then we're going to go to the second one. And this is where we're going to add a little bit more Earth. We're going to reach that 3 Earth synergy. So we're going to add a Greater Earth Graco and a Terra Lynx, and that's going to put us up at 220. So that also means we have 20 mastery points left over. Theoretically, you could add in another augment, maybe like another 20 cost augment, or you just save some money for movement, and maybe you even plan some movement. So in this case, I actually, for position, I would pull my Dokas back. Maybe I don't want them to be on the front line, just in case they do get clipped. They're squishy, they could get killed off early. We want to pull them back, and then our 3 frontline units would be the Earth Graco, our Water Riptor, and our Earth Terra Lynx. And so the thought process on this is if they're positioned on the right side, which I would assume they are because that's where we're really positioning here. Maybe they went to the other side though once they saw us positioned on the side, so that could make it difficult. But the Earth Terra Lynx would be able to tank a carry that's in the background plus a couple frontline units, meaning he'd survive. Same with the Graco, having him on the left side, open side too, so if they have a lot of melee units, they surround him, and then when he does his stun, it stuns all of them. Your Ranger, which is, by the way, both times, that's the Ranger. Yeah, it's slapping. I just put it down because it's considered a water fighter, so that actually activates those thresholds. Yeah, and so this is where I would set it up. The Ranger you could put anywhere. Remember, you can move, and you really should put that in the best position. You want it to either be next to probably the Riptor or next to the Terra Lynx so that they can really chew through enemies as quickly as you can, their damage potential. You could use her as an off tank as well, but because of the rumors I've heard of the Ranger being really strong, you want her to be in a safe position so she can do most of the damage. And right here, second round, you should be doing really well. You have 5 fighter, 3 water, 3 earth. If those synergies are even decently good, you should have a strong start. This should be a sweep. It needs to be if you're trying to kill them off quickly with this aggro deck. So that is the second round. You should have a cumulative damage of 360 damage on the enemy now, so they're only having 660 health left over, so you really need to push as hard as you can. So then the fourth round, and this is where they've seen your front line. You have a huge fighter, just wave of enemies coming at them. They're probably building up some bulwarks, trying to foster a strong front line, but they're probably now have a nice carry in the backyard, and you want to make sure that you can target them and get to them before they kill off your units. And so you're going to need rogues, and that's why I'm implementing 2 Volantes and a Lura. I have exalted Volantes right now, but if you'd made any movements before, you wouldn't have 360 mastery points for this possible. So you're going to want to potentially have some additional substitutes, like the greater or the lesser Volantes, just so you could substitute them in, and then you'll have that Lura that activates the 3 rogue as well, so you're good there, and it goes up to 5 earth. So now you're looking really powerful. You got 5 fighter, 5 earth, 3 water, 3 rogue. Once again, this should be a pretty powerful deck composition, and because your rogues are able to attack the backyard, they probably put all their main defensive units up front. They're leaving their carries in the back totally defenseless. These guys pop to the back, kill them, you're good to go. You do have the Lura over here. This is going to hop to the back in case they have a carry on the left side, and this will pull the aggro that the Graco is really soaking up. The Graco might die anyways, especially as these decks get the board gets more filled. He just can't soak up that much damage. You might end up losing some potential mastery point damage there, but then the Lura will hopefully charm and take up aggro while the rest of your team kind of sweeps right to left. And so that's how you could get through there. Hopefully you get most of the damage on this. It still needs to be almost all of it for you to really be successful with an aggro deck. And theoretically, your opponent should only have like 300 to maybe like 400 health left. You really don't want any more than that, or they could potentially outscale you pretty quick. So that's how the third round works. And then on the fourth round, you're now going to have, you're going to substitute in some stronger units that can hold the line a little bit more. And you're going to go more to traditional, like auto battler concepts, position on one side, really try to focus right to left or left to right, and push through there. So you're going to upgrade a couple of units. So we're going to throw in our deck wise, we're going to throw in a Scarabok, and a Hydrolinx, and then potentially a couple augments. You should have a little bit left over depending on how many moves you make. And so here's the positioning you could theoretically do. You could have your you substitute the water Doka for a water Hydrolinx. You substitute the Earth Grocko for a Scarabok, or maybe even a Goliath. You do have a little bit left over, and then you'd have the Laura, which would then still be going over same kind of concept to draw aggro while the Scarabok's there. And your right side of your force is really attacking right to left. I couldn't put the Ranger in anymore because they don't have a Ranger unit on Illuvium Master quite yet. But so you have your Ranger probably somewhere in here ready to help chew through with the help of your main force. And then that would hopefully clear through. And if you're lucky, you did over 1,000 damage total. You won the battle, and they're dead. And so, yeah, I once again, I just think this is going to be really important early on. When open beta opens, these are the units that people are going to be collecting at the beginning. They're not going to have that tier 5, stage 3, Umber, or any of those really cool units. So it's going to be, more of these small mini little armies. And so being able to understand how these work and how to defend against them is going to be key. Oh, and just to recap what the full deck would look like. So we would have our Dokas, so the two Dokas that we had from the beginning. I would suggest having all three variations of the Volante. You have the Riptor, the Hydrolinx, here's the other Volante, the Grocko, and then maybe a Goliath. You could have at least maybe like one more carry unit. They could potentially extend it out later, maybe like a Scoriox that gains from the Earth and the fighter concepts, or some other unit that could still benefit from the primary synergies and maybe extend you a couple more rounds so you can hopefully survive and finish it later on. And then otherwise, these blue ones, they represent the Ranger weapon. Purple represents armor, so you'd probably have 4 different weapons for maybe water, earth, sword, water, earth, daggers, so that she could be a rogue or a fighter and then help out with either of those. Maybe you have a shield if you want to have another bulwark in there as well. So that's a potential. And then 4 different armors, just potentials of maybe you want her more offensive or more defensive. It could be beneficial to swap those out. And then a couple augments just to have on standby, different price ranges that you could substitute in and maybe give to your Riptor or one of the Lynxes that could potentially be beneficial to help them scale just a little bit longer. Maybe a Goliath or a Scarabok so they can survive and really hold the line till the rest of your units clear. That wraps up the aggro deck. Let's move on to the next one, which is the mid to late game carry decks. I think these will be a staple in Illuvium. I think this is really where the team is going to push the game towards, or at least that's what I'm probably going to advocate for. Obviously, I need to try to get the game first before I can really make any opinion, but I think this is where it's going the direction of the game. And so you're basically going to have a carry unit that is so strong, especially a stage 2, stage 3, higher tier alluvial, that once you put a team around it, it is unkillable, or it is a destructive force that just wipes your enemy team. And that's really what you're going to be trying to do. And build the synergies, build the hyper for it so that it can become just an unstoppable machine. And so I won't go into the details like I did for the aggro deck. We'll do this more of a conceptual way. I will show an example deck of how it would be, but basically you just got to survive until the mid to late game. And these aggro decks are going to try and pick you off in those first 4 to 6 rounds, maybe longer, but I doubt it. Once they start losing, I could imagine they're like, oh shoot, it's over, I'm over. And they might surrender. Or maybe they have a sneaky twist in their deck that they could try and get a cheaty kind of win. But in general, I think that they're going to give up once you start to scale. And so realistically, once you get, even if you haven't even done any damage to them up to like round 6, once you get to round 6, you could start wiping and clearing their board, doing like 500 MP damage in a single play. So especially if you have a lot of units on the board, a lot of augments, you could do a lot of damage. So that's definitely something I can think of. So for these decks, I think that what you'd want is 2 to 4 carries, that you have at least 1 or 2 gameplay styles to play with. That way you can at least play against the enemy deck. Obviously aggro decks will just be hard against you, but you want to be able to play against all the other late game and mid game decks, as well as any of their crazy decks that I'll talk about later. So that's definitely one that you want to do. So there are a couple different carries, so you could have a little bit of flexibility. Then you're gonna have like 9 to 12 low cost units to help build up those carry units. You're probably gonna have like 3 to 5 weapons for your ranger that could vary. And remember, your goal for the ranger, and if you're new to Illuvium, the ranger equipment gives you the affinity and a class synergies. And when you then equip that in bond within Illuvial, you can get the composite synergies, which will be what really amplifies the power of some of these carry units. And so you really want to make sure that you're setting up the weapons so that you have multiple options to make sure that you get those composites, and just you have the ability to make all these carries just unstoppable. And your ranger could become that hyper carry as well. So that's what I'm thinking for the setup there. You have a couple suits too, to kind of go over that. So if we take a look right here, I made like a little fire deck. There's a little bit of water in there because I also have an Umber, and that's like your backup kind of play. But so basically you have a Seer, a Scoriox, and a Ramfire, and then you got the Umber. And so the whole goal of this is really try to amplify one of these 4. And so maybe in the first couple waves, you see them building up like a big empath build or a big Scion build in the backfield. You know that Umber or Ramfire are going to be the best for it. And then, you know, you have to dictate which one of these would be the best unit for it. We have a little bit of Scion in here, but I don't even think I put 3 Scion in here, so maybe Ramfire is not a good option. There is a good amount of fighter, so maybe Umber is good to pop in the back line, or maybe use both. And then you try to use the fire, extra fire damage, and water to make sure that they pop off quickly. So that's one path you could take, but maybe they have more of a standard front line, and you have a stronger front line, you think, so maybe you could set up with a Scoriox, a Seer, and really let the Scoriox just ramp up over time and chew through your enemies. So that's kind of how that would look. You'd have 4 different weapons for your ranger, 3 different suits, and then a whole bunch of augments. And your augments are key to making your carry unit really, really strong. Potentially for your frontline units, whatever that is, you also want them to be able to survive. But that's kind of how I foresee the mid to late game decks looking. Did I have any other? Nope. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm really excited to build these kind of decks because these are what I'm most excited for once we get more cards. It's just right as open beta happens, I just don't think we're going to have any of these cards. It's going to take some time for that to build up. It's going to take time for people to find these alluvials, get 9 of them, to fuse them and bond them. Oh man, it's going to be fun figuring out these. So let's go and move on to my third and last one, which is a wild card pick. All right, I could have done a sustained deck, but I hate those. I'm talking to you empath builders. That's just not my play style. But if it's good, I will play it. But I'm going to do this wild card. I'm calling these wild composite builds. It's all about creating crazy pivots and strategy. Like one round you're doing a Phantom Inferno combo, then you switch to Behemoth Frost, and it's just so drastic that the enemy cannot predict and or counter what you're trying to do, and they have just totally different approaches. So but there are 3 conditions that need to be met if this is going to be successful, if these are going to be even applicable at all. One is it cannot be expensive for you to move or sell units. If you do that, especially with high cost composite units, these carry kind of types, you're just going to lose way too much MP, and you will lose later in the game. 2 is that the synergies of these top tier units and just the top tier units themselves have to be really strong, especially compared to the smaller units. And I feel that in most cases, especially in survival, they have not been better until you're able to get a full team around them. So that's one thing to think about. And then you also just need a lot of MP to play with each round. You have to be able to make these big drastic changes. So if they make it so that it's only small increments, this will not be as applicable. But here is an example deck. All right. And so if you take a peek at this, you'll look at this and it's like, whoa, there's so much going on here. There's a variety of different major composites. You've got granite here. You've got invoker with the Sephirus. You've got magma. You've got some mystics, empaths. What is going on here? It'd be like, okay, there's a lot of different strategies they can do. They can do a whole bunch with this. So then you, as this composite builder, you already have a pre-planned kind of idea. And so round one, you actually do nothing. You let them set up their board, and you take the 120 MP just because you can. Not even a big deal. You're like, whatever, it hit me. I'm fine with it. But then the next round, you're able to see exactly where they place, and you're able to counter them. And so maybe this would be your first approach. And I don't know if you've ever seen this build in survival mode. It's kind of a little annoying one. You've got the granite from the Titan Ore and the Sephirus. So both of these units are invincible. And then you got the Sin Elf on the far left, and he's just sitting there. These two are invokers. So you'll end up wasting a whole bunch of time. And since you already know where their enemy units are, you know that this is a perfectly safe placement, unless they throw in some rogues randomly, that you're going to be really successful here. They're going to take so much time trying to kill this Titan Ore. He's just going to blow up and then explode on them. So then what this is going to lead to is they're going to be like, okay, well, now we need to counter this for round 3. And they're gonna be like, okay, well, we have to jump the Sin Elf, and they're gonna try and predict what your next move is. But you're already like next step ahead. You're ready. You have a chess mindset. You're ready to go. So you're actually already planning on selling your Sephirus, and then you expect them to send a whole bunch of rogues to the backline. So you put your Seer back there. You introduce a Scoriox, and they're just like, oh crap, everything that they just did was wasted. And luckily, your Titan Ore didn't move at all, so you didn't waste any money there. You had to move your Sin Elf, and you did lose a little bit for the 55 Sephirus. So there is a little bit of cost in doing this. But now you're set up like this, and now like, okay, wow, okay, now it's going to be really hard to penetrate and get into where they are. So then like you're like, okay, well, what's your next big twist? What's the next pattern of play? And so then you're going to be going in here. You're going to sell the Sin Elf, move in a Geyser, and then potentially a Greater Apon, activating 2 Mystic, and then you throw in an Adorius, getting 3 Mystic, and you put a couple augments on your Scoriox. He's now just a Gatling machine. And or you could do is you could have a second set where you make your Titan or Geyser just like an unkillable machine that just survives from the Mystic shields and the heals, and it's just unkillable, and it could be a sustained deck also. And so you set up like a pattern of these, like 3 to 5 of these crazy drastic changes that even though you're losing a lot of MP by making these sells and these trades, your pattern of play and these unique ideas just completely offset the enemy every single time. And so that's how these decks could be. Now, are they good for Illuvium? I don't know. This turns the game into a very coin flip kind of thing. But if we're really thinking of like a chess kind of game where you're trying to like learn everything, and maybe we had more time to analyze the opponent's deck, you'd be able to go through and when you're looking at their deck, you'd be like, okay, I think these are the different patterns that they could take, and then you have to find the most risk-adverse way to approach it so that you're safe in all different cases and that you'll still be successful. Yeah, and I think these could be fun in some cases. With that being said, let me reiterate that this is pure speculation. I don't have any insider information from the Game Sub Council. I've just seen what the influencers have seen, nothing more. And I really think that it's going to be a fun game. I cannot wait to get into the arena, play with you guys, and start theory crafting even more of what these decks will look like. Let me know in the comments what deck you're interested in. And if you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys next time.